Benjamin Saulnier, also known as an aesthetics interpreter, is, in my opinion, one of the most important artists of this generation. Challenging gender non-conforming ideals is something we could all use a little more of. Hi, Benjamin. Thank you for joining me on LIECKminded. It's so nice to meet you.
Oh, it's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I have been a fan of your work for quite some time now, and I have been so excited to to know a little bit more about who this Benjamin is. And I want to just jump right into it. Did you grow up in a creative home? What was your home life like growing up?
Yeah, I grew up in New Jersey, so the landscape itself was maybe not so creative, but I did come from a creative family. A lot of people in my family were more in the music uh, aspect of creative works, but I definitely found myself drawn towards the visual arts, painting, drawing from a young age.
Amazing. So your parents were very supportive of creativity that you would express as a kid.
Oh yeah, I mean, from the very basics of, buying coloring books and crayons to providing paints and, when I was a kid, I would draw little outfits for my Barbie dolls and tape them to those, they were very supportive.
Same, same. I think we're the same person. I think as we go along in this interview, we'll discover that.
I love that.
Yes. So it leads me to what was little Benjamin like as a person? Now that we've established that your parents actually did support this creativity in you.
I guess it's odd to talk about myself in that way because I still feel very much the same person. But I would say as a kid, I was really full of wonder and creativity and looking for beauty and the aspects of everything. I was really drawn to glamour. So for me, as a young kid, watching something like Wheel of Fortune and having Vanna White come out in these glittering gowns and big hair every night was like the epitome of glamour to me.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that bled into, fashion magazines and, seeing all different kinds of creative people and what they were doing in the world. And
Yeah.
I would then, do that hopefully growing up.
Were you a fan of the variety shows, or was that before your growing up?
Those were a bit before my time. However, I was really lucky to then, still have YouTube as part of my later teenage years to access that work and kind of get re-inspired all over again through, Bob Mackie costumes and all the different ways of connecting with an audience.
Yes. It's one of the things that I think those little nuggets that do spark our creativity as young gay men especially, we're always looking for those sources, to spark our imagination. And when I was a kid, I was told a lot, and I know you were too, that little boys don't do those things, or those things are just for girls. And these were said by adults that I looked up to. And I read somewhere that you were told the same things, and I think it's a tale as old as time. I think a lot of us growing up queer do get told that, when we're aspiring to be the creative, individuals that we are. How did that make you feel growing up, and how did you handle that when people said that to you?
I would say that I was lucky in coming from a very open-minded family, so that was always a great support system. And I think a lot of that insistence on what gender binary means in terms of creativity and playtime and this and that really kind of came from society around us. And um, sorry, cat in the way. um, there was something pretty liberating about growing up and realizing that the only limitations that are really there are the ones that you place on yourself. So allowing yourself to experience the costumes, the art, the way of thinking that maybe was a bit prohibitive before, is now very possible as an adult.
Yeah, which probably led to your the way that you reference yourself is as an aesthetic interpreter. What does that mean in your life? I know what that means intellectually, but how do you apply that to your everyday life?
I mean, I felt that I went to an art school for college, and I really felt that there was a lot of pressure to quickly define what kind of artist you were going to be, whether that was a painter or a photographer, a sculptor, whatever that may be. Um, and so when I kind of came into this idea of just an aesthetic interpreter in general, for me, that continued on with that freedom of being able to access different parts of my brain and give myself the freedom to work in whatever medium I wanted to. And therefore, that kind of bleeds into my personal life, how I present myself with my clothing and, uh, the eyeliner and things like that.
I don't have any on today.
Fresh face.
I just woke up like this. No, I love seeing guys wearing eyeliner and really stepping into that moment in their own individual way because, we all do it differently and we all see it differently on ourselves. And but I love that because it feels like for the first time in history, in a very long time, we're seeing a big group of men embracing that makeup's for them too. And it doesn't have to be the little tiny guy kit that brands put out that make you not look like you're wearing it, but it's actually a very intentional, forward thinking, I'm going to wear this liner, I'm going to wear this color and unapologetically and it's going to translate with whatever fashion I'm choosing to wear with it. And
It's
I
such
love that
a power move.
yeah, you do that. You do that. I see that you're using a lot of historical fashion references in what you choose to put on your body, what you choose to put together in your street style. And I always say I use the streets as my runway. That's, one of my famous sayings that I always really do I live by. I don't leave the house unless I'm I've interpreted something, that feels good to me. And I know you do the same thing. I can tell by all the pictures that I see of you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you would agree in saying that, there's such a difference between fashion and style. And a lot of people, you can't really be taught style. And when you have people who are connected with that sense of what style is and
Yeah.
knowing that it doesn't need to be regulated to high fashion or designer or any of that, but being able to have a point of view and go out into the world and communicate that without having to speak to people.
Yeah.
It's unique, and we need more of it.
Well, it's so true, and I'm glad you said that because I I'm very insistent on that message in my own life. I feel like designer is secondary. Okay, like I mean, I have a lot of Vivienne Westwood in my closet, but the designer name is not why I buy Vivienne Westwood. Vivienne Westwood creates a silhouette that I really enjoy. But most of my closet is not it's not geared to name brand designer stuff. I'm not invested in who made it. I'm invested in how it makes me feel. And it could cost $1, it could cost, $1,000, whatever. But how it makes me feel is really the most important thing. And I think that is what style really that's the definition of style is how you feel in it.
I totally agree. I recognize this in you as well, the ability to see potential in things that most people can't. And
Yeah.
that's also such an important aspect of putting oneself together or creating something to give back to the world, is being able to recognize potential in things that other people would write off very easily.
Well, that's the premise of this entire show. It is a DIY based format, but it's also an artist, profile format as well. And it started as a DIY format, seeing the potential in all things, things that people throw away, breathing new life into things. And we can do that with every single thing from an object for your home to clothing, to even food, like reimagining food. And, which makes me wonder, does your style aesthetic on yourself translate to your home also? What is that? What does your home inspiration look like?
My Home is kind of always in flux. I've never really settled on this idea of finished with my house.
Hmm.
Um, I would say the thing that carries over is a very specific idea of style, and then surrounded by a lot of visual stimulant, whether that's wall sculptures or photographs or, wild prints on pillows.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it's nice to kind of be surrounded by things that can simulate your brain and give you that sense of euphoria.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I'm sure that you have influences from some of your favorite style icons. Who would you say some of those style icons are?
Oh my gosh, style icons, it's so hard because everyone kind of, I think of it all as a collage of how I build my personal style and taking little bits from here and there and, um, wild references to mid-century fashion that would have been for women, which I can now adapt and use for myself, whether it's a really proportioned, swing coat with a great lining or a sequin high-waisted pair of pants that look like they belong out of Studio 54.
I love that so much. You're speaking my language. Which makes me love the fact that you embrace androgyny in your work. Androgyny is such a big conversation in how you approach the art that you do. Tell me about that. Tell me about androgyny and what that means in your work.
It's kind of similar to that discussion of what little boys and little girls are meant to do, and entering the art world and recognizing that there was a similar idea of what materials were meant to be used by men and what materials were meant to be used by women, and how queer artists are seen in or have been seen in the past, in the art world.
Right.
Uh, and I've never been a fan of limits, so to kind of work with that and challenge it, and a lot of my work has remained small scale, which perhaps is maybe not the popular uh, way of the art world, but I think it works for me. And to work a lot with fabrics that would traditionally not be seen as a masculine uh, material, unless you're showing this sort of butch aspect of wool or something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's been important to me to free myself and free the material and allow things to become more fluid.
And not impose rules on things. That's a really big message. I live my life that way too. Some of those fabrics you describe are some of my go-tos, you know. Playing the
Yeah,
masculine against the feminine is a really fun game.
absolutely. It really elevates everything.
It does. How do you go about choosing the subjects that you paint?
It's a bit of everything. I have a lot of people who will reach out on social media and ask to be drawn, and um, I tend to have a constant sketchbook of poses I'm interested in seeing in real life and how that works. A lot of the watercolor paintings I do really focus a lot on the gesture of a human being.
Hmm.
So, when you find in New York, we're very lucky to have so many wonderful performers who can really twist and contort their bodies into so many fun shapes that it really challenges me to think of something a little bit even, wild and fun and uh, irreverent. And if
Yeah.
the model's willing and I've got a sketch that can match, it's always fun to work together and make something happen.
It's clear to me that burlesque is a big source of inspiration for you.
I mean, it's an art form to me that, like art, takes such discipline. And there's such glamour in it, but the glamour in burlesque to me has been taken so seriously, which I love.
Yeah.
This idea of being feminine or glamorous can often be seen as frivolous in society. And when I think there's a lot of power in looking at something like that and saying, no, no, I want that. I'm going to own it. I'm going to respect it and mirror it out to the world. And I think that a lot of kids growing up will catch glimpses of these performers and aesthetics, and hopefully that will inspire them. Obviously, the movement is so interesting to me as well. The movement in my mind is kind of like a paintbrush stroke. It's
Yeah.
just so wonderfully soft and thought out and precise.
Which is the perfect segue to my audience loves to know an artist's process and what mediums they work in, what their favorite tools are. Can you let us in a little bit on those little nuances that make your work so special?
Yeah, I mean, my work really kind of divides into two sections of figurative watercolors and abstract multimedia projects. And with the watercolors specifically, I really love to focus on the gesture of a moment to capture something in an ephemeral way rather than a realistic way. Uh,
Yeah,
so I think if you look at some of my, you know, burlesque illustrations or fashion illustrations, I hope it really conveys a moment, a movement, a gesture. And then with the more abstract work, I'm really interested in the material itself. How does the material react to shape or color or form?
are you working in watercolors, acrylics? What's your favorite types of paint and canvases to work with?
Lately, I've been very dedicated to watercolors for their uh, for many things, for their color selections, for the way they take the page.
Yeah,
Uh, I won't say that I stick exclusively with one material because I think that depending on what you're trying to convey with the piece, it really, I think it was Stephen Sondheim who says something along the lines of form dictates content or content dictates form. And
yeah,
that's sort of how I approach the work as well.
amazing, amazing. It's no secret that I love me a portrait from an artist that is no longer living, but I do love to support artists that are still living because let's face it, they do need to make a living, and I love supporting them. Who are two of your favorite living artists?
At the moment, and I think this is probably just because I've seen their work very recently, um, Salman has been making these amazing paintings that are focused around queer nightlife, and they bring in the use of green in a way that we probably haven't seen since someone like Toulouse-Lautrec. So
Yeah,
they're very energetic, and I think he does a wonderful job of capturing the feeling of being out, the feeling of being a queer person in a nightlife space.
yeah,
I've been a big fan of their work. And then also Jennifer Packer has done incredible paintings of people, and her use of color is also just so unparalleled by some of the younger contemporary artists at the moment. Uh, and I guess color is really the driving force of what attracts me to other people's work is their
yeah.
interpretation of it, their understanding of it.
I love that so much, and I love that question so much because it's how we find out about artists that seem obscure to so many of us. And through the lenses of another artist, I think it's a very valuable recommendation to pay attention to some of these other brilliant artists' work as well. One of my favorite things in life is to give back to the community, not just, my community that's around me, but the artist community in general. What are some of the ways that you give back to your community and fellow artists?
Yeah, I mean, I think that looks different depending on where you are at in your personal life. I think the easiest way to give back is, showing up for the people in your community. So when people have shows or initiatives, really being able to attend those or spread the word if you can attend. Social media in this way has been very helpful to help spread messages and awareness of everyone's uh, kind of fight to be heard.
That's very true. It's and speaking of each other's work is a very easy thing to do in this generation of social media. It's a way that we can help one another without costing a dime.
Yeah.
And I really love encouraging people to show up for each other, especially if you're an artist, especially if you're, someone that makes your living in that way. There's no better way to give back to an artist than to bring awareness and really rally support around what they do, and that means paying for their work. That means paying for their shows, you know not asking your artist friends for comp tickets, things like that, because it
Yeah,
matters. That's how they make their living. It's a very important dynamic.
absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
I've noticed that you've caught the attention of quite a few galleries. Do you have any gallery shows currently or any that are coming up?
I don't have anything on the books that I can speak of at the moment. I did just finish, I was part of a group show called Postcards from the Edge
Yeah.
that collects artists from all around the world to give a piece to this amazing show where the work sold, the money goes to benefiting visual aids, which is a wonderful nonprofit here in New York, helping artists living with HIV and AIDS. So I was very happy to be a participant in that.
See, there's a
Uh,
way you gave back right there. You totally forgot to mention that.
it was last month. I forgot already.
I'm sure you give back in ways that you don't even realize.
The goal is always to have something on deck, and I think it takes a lot of time to plan shows. So
Yeah.
hopefully, we'll see some updates in the early summer.
Do you teach at all, or do you just like, do you mentor? Do you do anything like that?
I don't. I would love to. It's just sort of not come about yet.
Yeah.
Um, but I do love the community. So it's nice. I think art can always be made better by speaking to other artists, by speaking to people coming to look at work, because it brings up ideas and interpretations that you can't quite get to on your own.
Yeah, and art is so subjective. It's obviously left up to the interpreter. I don't think it's as important to know the true definition behind why an artist painted it. You know,
Yeah,
but what it means to us is really the thing that matters the most.
absolutely. It's always important to connect
It
with the
is.
audience.
How would people find your work? What's the best way that they can source your work and purchase it or commission you to do a piece?
So the best way would probably be through my website, as there's a contact form on there, and that goes directly to my email. Um, I do occasionally check Instagram messages, but I do find it to be a bit difficult as, they have so many filters, so some messages just don't get seen for weeks.
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend the website.
So you're an analog boy in a digital world also.
Also, yes, I would love, I mean, listen, I love, physical mail. I send out a lot of handwritten letters, so anyone who can figure that out as well, I'm down to respond to a letter.
Do you do the wax pouring of the wax with
I
the
I would love to. I am so nervous that that will just get lost in the mail because, I just kind of pop it in on whatever street I'm in New York, and you never know what happens with
that's
that.
that's pretty much my questions all answered.
I think this was wonderful. We covered a lot today, and it was so nice to finally be able to sit down with you and connect and just chat for a bit. It's a wonderful
Yeah,
start.
it was a treat and the pleasure was mine. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I truly hope you liked this episode of Like Minded. Click that like and subscribe button, and always remember, nothing's off limits when you're like minded.